The day my son told me I wasn't invited to his wedding, I was standing in my kitchen making coffee. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. Sunlight came through the window, touching the old wooden table where my son, Daniel, used to eat cereal before school. I still remembered how he would leave his backpack on the floor and promise to clean his room later. I remembered teaching him how to ride a bicycle, sitting beside his bed when he had a fever, and working extra shifts so he could attend college without worrying about money. Then my phone rang, Dad. Daniel said his voice sounded nervous. "Hey, son," I replied, "everything okay?" There was a long silence. "I need to tell you something about the wedding." I smiled. His wedding was only 6 weeks away. I had been looking forward to it for months. I had already bought a new suit. I had even written a short speech, although nobody had asked me to give one. "What about it?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Rachel doesn't want you there." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood him. "What do you mean?" she says. "The wedding should only include people she feels comfortable around. She thinks there has been too much tension between you two." I leaned against the kitchen counter. Tension. Rachel and I had never had a serious argument. I had always tried to respect her. When Daniel introduced her to me, I welcomed her into the family. I helped them move into their first apartment. When their car broke down, I paid for the repairs when they were struggling to make rent. I quietly sent Daniel money and told him he could repay me whenever life became easier. I had never expected anything in return, but I had expected to see my only son get married. So I said slowly, "Your wife doesn't want me at your wedding. She says it would be better if you didn't come." "And what do you want?" Another silence. "I don't want to argue with her, Dad." That answer hurt more than anything else. He didn't say he agreed with her. He didn't say he was sorry. He simply didn't want to argue with her. I looked around the kitchen. Every corner of that house held memories of Daniel. Small mark on the wall where he had thrown a baseball. The old cabinet where I kept his childhood drawings. The chair where he used to sit and tell me about his dreams. For years I believed that love meant always being available. I thought being a father meant giving without keeping score. But standing there with the phone in my hand, I realized something painful. Sometimes people become so used to your support that they forget you are a person with feelings. Daniel finally spoke again. "Dad, please don't make this difficult." I closed my eyes, then I smiled. Even though he couldn't see me. "Understood," I said. He sounded relieved. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand." "Yes." I replied, "I understand." Then I ended the call for several minutes. I stood quietly in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't call him back. I didn't send angry messages. I simply poured my coffee into the sink and went upstairs. The suit I had bought was hanging inside my closet. I took it out, looked at it for a few seconds, and placed it back. Then I opened my desk drawer and removed the wedding gift I had prepared. It was a check for $50,000. I had saved that money for years. After my wife passed away, I sold a small piece of land that had belonged to her family. I kept the money because I wanted to give Daniel something meaningful. When he started his own family, the check was meant to help him buy a house. It was supposed to be my final big gift to my son. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it back in the drawer. If I wasn't important enough to be present at the wedding, I decided I would not force my presence into their future either. That evening, Daniel sent me a message. "That I hope you're not upset." I typed several responses, then I deleted them finally. I wrote, "I said I understood." He replied with a thumbs up. That tiny symbol felt colder than any argument. During the next few weeks, I stopped calling. Usually I was the one who checked on Daniel. I asked about his work. I reminded him about appointments. I sent money when he mentioned unexpected expenses. This time I did nothing at first. He didn't notice, then he called. "Dad, did you forget to send the money for the wedding photographer?" I looked at the calendar. He had asked me to cover the photographer months earlier. I had agreed because I wanted to help. But circumstances had changed. "I didn't forget," I said. "So when will you send it?" "I won't." He became quiet. "What do you mean?" "I mean I won't be paying for the photographer." "Dad, you promised I would be part of your life." "That's not fair." "No." I said calmly, "It isn't." He became angry. "Rachel is my wife. I have to respect her wishes." "You do," I answered. "But you also made a choice. You chose not to stand beside your father. Now I'm choosing to respect the distance you created. You're punishing me." "No. I'm accepting your decision." He ended the call without saying goodbye. The wedding took place 3 weeks later. I knew because Daniel's cousin posted pictures online. The ceremony looked beautiful. Rachel wore a white dress. Daniel wore a dark blue suit. Their friends smiled beside them. I studied every picture. Then I saw something that surprised me. The seat that should have belonged to me was empty. There was no father sitting in the front row, no father walking beside the groom. No father giving a speech. No father dancing with his son. For the first time I wondered whether Daniel felt my absence. But I didn't contact him instead. I drove to the cemetery and visited my wife. I sat beside her grave and told her everything I tried. I whispered I did everything I knew how to do. The wind moved through the trees. For years I had visited that place whenever I felt lost. But that day I didn't ask for answers. I only made a promise I will stop begging people to value me. After the wedding months passed, Daniel rarely called when he did. He usually needed something. His rent had increased, his car needed repairs. Rachel wanted to start a business. Each time he spoke as though my help was automatic. But I had changed, I wasn't cruel. I didn't insult him, I simply said no. The first time I refused. He called me selfish the second time. He accused me of caring more about money than family. The third time I reminded him that family was the reason. I had spent most of my life helping him. He had no answer then. Almost a year after the wedding, someone knocked on my door. It was Daniel. He looked tired. His clothes were wrinkled and there were dark circles beneath his eyes. For a moment I saw the little boy he used to be, Dad. He said, "Hello, son. Can I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had eaten breakfast as a child. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he looked down. "Rachel and I are having problems." I waited, she says. "I've changed, have you?" He sighed, "I don't know." He explained that they were struggling financially. Their arguments had become frequent. Rachel blamed him for not earning enough. Daniel blamed her for spending too much. Then he said something unexpected. "She told me you were always controlling." I looked at him. "Did you believe her?" "At first, yes. And now. I'm not sure." I stood and walked to my desk. I opened the drawer and removed a folder. Inside were copies of every payment I had made for Daniel over the years. College expenses, rent, car repairs, medical bills, wedding deposits. I placed the folder on the table. "This is what controlling looks like," I asked. He opened the folder. His face changed as he read. "I didn't know you paid for all of this. You didn't ask. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't help you." "So you would feel guilty?" He lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Dad." I sat across from him. "For what?" "For the wedding." The room became quiet. "I should have invited you." "Yes," I said. "I should have stood up for you." "Yes, I was afraid Rachel would be angry." "And you thought I wouldn't be hurt." Tears filled his eyes. I didn't think about it. That was the truth, not that Rachel forced him. Not that he had no choice. He simply didn't think about what his decision would do to me. Sometimes the deepest pain doesn't come from hatred. It comes from being forgotten by someone you sacrificed everything for. "I don't expect you to forgive me." Daniel said, "I already forgave you." I replied. He looked surprised. "Then why did you stop helping me?" "Because forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the same behavior forever." He nodded slowly. That conversation changed something between us. Not immediately. Trust does not return in one afternoon. Over the following months, Daniel began calling without asking for money. Sometimes he called just to talk. He asked about my health. He visited on weekends. He repaired the broken fence behind my house. One day he brought old photographs. There was a picture of me teaching him to ride a bicycle. Another showed us fishing. He smiled. "I forgot how much you did for me." "I didn't," I said. We both laughed. A year later, Daniel called again. "Dad, Rachel and I are renewing our vows." I didn't respond. Then he added, "And this time I want you to stand beside me." I felt something tighten in my chest. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "What does Rachel want?" There was a pause. Then Daniel answered firmly, "This time I'm telling you what I want." On the day of the ceremony, I wore the same suit I had bought for his first wedding. It still fit. Daniel stood beside me before the guests arrived. He looked nervous. "Dad," he said, "I want to thank you." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He handed me a small box. Inside was a silver watch. Engraved on the back were the words, "Thank you for never giving up on me." I looked at my son for years. I believed being a good father meant saying yes to everything. But I had learned something important. Love without boundaries can become invisible. When you give endlessly, people may stop seeing the sacrifice. They begin to believe your support is simply something they deserve. The day Daniel told me I wasn't invited to his wedding, I smiled and said understood. He thought I was accepting rejection, but I was accepting reality. I understood that I could not force someone to respect me. I understood that I could not buy a place in my own son's life. And I understood that sometimes the strongest response is not anger. Sometimes it is silence, sometimes it is distance. Sometimes it is allowing people to live with the choices they made. My son eventually returned, but he returned because he learned the value of love, not because I begged him to stay. And when he stood beside me at the second ceremony, I realized that forgiveness had never been the difficult part. The difficult part was learning to respect myself. I loved my son, I always would. But love should never require us to erase our dignity. That was the lesson hidden inside one painful sentence. Dad, you're not invited because that's what my wife wants. And my answer remained the same. I smiled, understood.